Welcome to the Silver Bow Publishing virtual launch for Amabel's Children by Gregory Wolos. We're excited that you're here today to join us to celebrate this new release. My name is Megan Hakkinen. I'm a two-time ultra cycling world champion and the author of two adventure memoirs. Silver Bow Publishing is a Canadian company releasing 20 to 30 books per year by and um, international writers in the genres of fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. Candice James is at the helm of Silver Bow as general manager, and I'd like to invite her to share a few words about working with the author before we begin. We'll have time for questions and discussion near the end. Candice, tell us what it was like working with Gregory.
Otherworldly, interesting, actually quite scintillating at times. Gregory is really a force to be reckoned with. I love his writing. I love his characters. The first book, Tings, was great, and then he followed it up with Amabel's Children, which you're about to hear today. And I'm sure nobody will be disappointed. He's a treasure to work with and a pleasure to publish. That's my little alliteration for the day. And also, he very nicely introduced me to Michael Keith, who I see is here today, who is also another fabulous writer in a different genre. Anyway, Greg, I'm looking forward to it. Back to you, Megan.
Thanks, Candice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Candice. It's always great to have you here to celebrate with us. Um, so you can order Amabel's Children at local retail bookstores and libraries worldwide, or from the publisher through the Silver Bow website. The ebook version is available on Amazon. Silver Bow's website and the purchase links for this book are being posted in the chat, so be sure to check those out. Without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our celebrated author, Gregory Wolos. Having raised two children and spent more than 3 decades as an educator in upstate New York, Gregory Wolos currently resides with his wife of 44 years in the small
46.
town. 46?
Yeah, I made a misprint.
That's okay. 46, even better. Wow, that is a wonderful amount of time. 46 years in a small town not far from Boston, Massachusetts. Gregory's daily regime includes writing, running, and tending grandchildren. He holds a doctorate from the University of Albany. Over 100 of Gregory's short stories have been published in journals and anthologies like Glimmer Train, Georgia Review, Michigan Quarterly Review, Descant, Florida Review, The Pinch, Post Road, and many others. Gregory's work has won monetary awards sponsored by Solstice, Descant, Gulfstream, New South, the Rubery Book Award, Emory Journal, Gambling the Isle, and the White Eagle Coffee Store Press. Gregory has published five story collections, Women of Consequence, Regal House Publishing 2019, Dear Everyone with Duck Lake Books, The Green Ray and Other Stories from Scantic Books, The Thing About Men, Cervena Barva Press, and What the Children See. Amabel's Children is Gregory's second novel, and it's a sequel to Tings, also published by Silver Bow back in 2024. More often than not, Gregory's fiction reflects Kafka's assertion that a literary work should be an ice axe to break up the frozen sea inside us. You can check out Gregory's website at gregorywolos.com. I'll put that link in the chat. So we're really excited to hear from you today, Gregory. It sounds like you have some stuff queued up for us, and I will hand things over to you now.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, Candice, for the kind words. And thank you, friends, family, and interested spectators for coming to hear me read today and talk about Amabel's Children. And what, after all, are Amabel's Children? Who are they? Who were they? Well, I guess I'll start with talking about who they were from reading the prologue. Since this is a sequel, I had to introduce a bit so that you'd get to know what the second novel was going to be all about. I'll also talk a little bit about who the parents of Amabel's Children were, because if you got children, you've got to have parents. And I'll because the novel is divided up into several segments narrated by different characters, different personalities, I'll try to maintain coherence while introducing several of the aspects of the novel, or several of the characters. So I'm going to jump in by starting with a bit of the prologue. What were the circumstances that led to Amabel's children? This is from the prologue. The premise of Amabel's Children, it's a television show, by the way, a reality TV show. I guess we should know that. The premise of Amabel's Children had been simple. Celebrity actor Amabel Hadley, suffering from an aggressive form of cancer, had frozen a dozen of her eggs, pre-fertilized by her lesser celebrity husband, Carl Walchek. But she did not recover. And after her death, despondent Carl had been persuaded to sign away his parental rights to the frozen fertilized eggs for the purposes of creating a reality television show. On the program, a dozen demographically diverse couples, after a grueling set of televised competitions against over 100 applicants, were each awarded one of Amabel Hadley's fertilized eggs. Of the 12 subsequent implantations, 10 took. Subject to a strict set of rules, the 10 offspring of these surrogate births were raised in separate homes by their nurturing adoptive parents, or nerdies. Production crews embedded in each household recorded the daily lives of the children from infancy through toddlerhood, nursery, and elementary school. The program's creators emphasized that the children were not simply sideshow curiosities. They were a legitimate socio-anthropological experiment. How impactful would the differing financial statuses of the nerdy couples be? Would marital problems have a measurable impact? What about the different religions each set of nerdies bestowed upon their adoptees? When interest in Amabel's Children slipped during the last seasons, the program faded away into television history. So what about now? That was 10 years ago. What about now? Where are the parents? Well, we know Amabel's dead. She's a ghost. And the first chapter introduces her as a ghost. How long I've been a ghost, I can't be sure. Day passes to night, I change hosts. Night passes into day. Over and over, I accompany living things, from invisible microbes to humans of all ages, to any and all species of animal, whether on land, in the air, or in the water. My attachment is existential, unnoticed by my hosts, as best as I can tell, and never for longer than a single transition from darkness to light. Without script or cipher, I share my host's daily experience. If there are rules regarding my state, I am not party to them. I have no idea where and to what I'll be attached as I pass through time, or if there are patterns to my existence that are beyond the comprehension I've been allowed. Am I alone in this purgatory? I don't know. If there are other ghosts attached to their own hosts, or even sharing mine, I have no information. I certainly do not see them. And that's her condition. And Amabel will pop up here and there throughout the novel as a ghost. What will she learn? What will she do? What will happen to her in her status? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out. Well, Amabel's Children had a father, Carl Walchuk. Grief-stricken after the death of his wife, after some other horrible things that have happened to him, after giving up the fertilized eggs that were to be his children had his wife survived, Carl went down to the Amazon in South America, and years before, almost 20 years before, he'd been making a documentary about an anthropologist who lived and recorded among the Piraha natives, the Indians there. We'll learn more about them in the future, but Carl, after the death of his wife, in the middle of the production of Amabel's Children, the first version, took off and retreated back to the village where he lives. So I'll read you a little bit about Carl's life in the village. How long has he been back in the Amazon rainforest with the Paraha? Carl Walchuk muses as he squats in the latrine area a short distance from the village huts. He is losing the capacity to wonder about time, and the question is becoming moot. What are decades, after all? He spends much of each day in a dull but not unpleasant feud. The events of his past that led to his retreat back to this village slide through his awareness like shadows, and he is losing his grip on the process of retrieving memories. The record of his past possesses less and less order. Oh, to live as purely as the Paraha who live in the present, locked in a language that allows no speculation about past or future. And the Paraha, this is not from the novel, this is me explaining, the Paraha are an actual tribe, and the anthropologist studying them, a fellow named Daniel Everett, realized that their language and their existence, their epistemological framework, which means how they understand reality, they admit only to the present. Their language restricts them to the present. In fact, he was studying them because they disproved the idea of a language universal that Noam Chomsky had constructed, and that was incontrovertible for years. But the Paraha don't understand past, present, and future. And in other words, if you leave the Paraha, when Carl paddled away the first time, and he went around a bend, his mate, he had actually fallen in love and mated with one of the Paraha women. He no longer existed for her. He disappeared. When he showed up again, she had a different mate and also a child, which is his son. And she did not re-accept him as a mate. She just said, oh, here's a person, and he's back. And he just lived among the Paraha, hoping to be like them, to forget his troubled past. But now he also has a son. So there's more than just the original Amabel's children. There's also Carl's son, who goes by the name of Zunx, X-U-N-X, which is supposed to be unpronounceable because Carl, though he's lived back with the Paraha for almost 20 years, doesn't understand a word of their language. Maybe just one or two, and they understand maybe a word or two of his. In fact, they call him a crooked head because he doesn't think like they think. One of the things Carl wonders, as he's back with the Parahas, is Amabel's children still on the air? He doesn't know. It was on the air when he left. Is there even such a thing as television anymore? Carl has watched Zunx, the closest approximation of the young man's name Carl's tongue, teeth, throat, and lips can produce, progress from playing with sticks and chasing rodents and monkeys to performing the Paraha hunting rituals that have brought him to manhood. Is Zunx 18? Is he 20? Walchuk blood runs through his son. A share of that blood also floods the hearts, veins, and arteries of the children featured on Amabel's Children. Because they are his children too, aren't they? And now, 10 years after that show, the kids who were not allowed to know each other while the show was in production because it would ruin the experiment. One of the children named Carla, they're all 17-ish now, decided to connect all the kids, and she's been Zooming with them. So I'm going to read you from one of their Zooms. It's Carla who has reconnected the siblings after a decade, inviting them to join her for a series of Zoom meetings. Before today's meeting, the third, she's forwarded each of them a chart she thought would be useful. It's based on our physical traits, she explains to the 8 other teens collected in the galley grid. Carl's chart provides a descriptive scale, designating each of them as an A, B, or C baby. I am definitely an A baby, Carla declares to her siblings. I have our bio mom's hair and eyes. Don't I look just like the cartoon version of Amabel on the old show's logo? Here's how we're divided up. If you think you belong to a different category, make your case. There's room for debate. Simon, you and Shayna and I are A babies. Veronica, Sinclair, and Trey, you're C babies because you've got the features of our biological father, Carl. Treasure, Salvatore, and Mabel, you guys are all B babies because you combine features of both our bio folks. Carla sits back, watching her siblings glance from gallery box to gallery box as they assess their own and each other's features. Do we get to pick our own pronouns? Mabel asks. I'm fine being a bee baby, I suppose. I certainly don't look like Amabel or Carl, but I'm not sure about the girl-boy breakdown. I might like to be a they instead of a she. We should all be able to be whatever we want, Salvatore says. Of course, Carl agrees. I didn't mean to offend anybody. Of course we can choose our own pronouns. But the ABC list is just about which of our bio parents we resemble physically. Is there a value to being one more than the other? Salvatore asks. What's it worth to be an A or a C? Is a B baby like me just a diluted AC combo? Why wasn't the show called Amabel and Carl's Children? Veronica, a C baby, asks. Our bio dad had as much to do with us as Amabel. It's not like she delivered us or anything. It's because she was dead. And that was the whole reason that they could make the show in the first place, Shayna says bluntly. Simon tosses his glossy waves of auburn hair and grins lopsidedly with his bio mom's provocative smile. Amabel was the famous one, right? Wasn't that the point of the show? Don't we all represent her comeback? What we represent is somebody's chance to make a lot of money, Mabel says. Let's face it, if our birth folks hadn't frozen a dozen of us so we could, when we were just embryos, there wouldn't have been a show. So it's about fame, yes, but also about availability. Shayna sighs. Look at us. Are you all watching on gallery mode? We look like some weird Brady Bunch kids. Did you ever see that show on the Oldies channel? We're monsters, Veronica exclaims in a scary voice, widening then squinting her eyes. Isn't that what people said? That's what I read when I Googled us. I prefer to think that we're special. There's nobody else like us anywhere, Shayna says. I like your chart, Carla. Some of us look like twins, like you and me, except I have blue eyes instead of green. Still, when I look at you, Carla, I feel like I'm looking in a mirror. I caught myself looking at your gallery box when I thought I was looking at myself. So these are some of the kids. Some of them will be more developed than others as the story goes on. There are problems. They don't really know each other, yet they're siblings. They're just finding out about each other. They have different, sometimes kind of strange relationships among each other, developing relationships to be sure. But something's going to happen with these kids. What they need is a grand adventure. And I'm going to find out about that now in this next chapter. One of the siblings I mentioned, Simon, Simon is an A baby. He looks a lot like his mother. He's a fine-looking young man, and he wants to follow his mother into show business. So he's connected one of the original creators of the Amabel's Children show all these years later, and she's responded, and she invites. He lives in Seattle, Washington. He and his family, his nerdies, live in Seattle, Washington. She invites him to Los Angeles to her office, and with the intent of discussing his career. But while discussing what he was hoping was going to be his original career, she sets the direction that these children are about to go on, Amabel's Children. Bronwyn fixes Simon with a laser-like glare. Simon, what would you think about going on the grandest televised adventure of all time? You and the rest of the kids. What if you guys were to go on an expedition down the Amazon into the rainforest in search of your lost father? We'd film the whole thing, from prepping for the trip here in the U.S., consultations with experts on navigating the Amazon or whatever waterways there be. We could do a live exploration. The progress of our journey through the rainforest would be on TV every week, like Survivor or Naked and Alone. But for us, for the siblings and the television audience, it'd be a real goal, not just a prize for endurance. You'd be finding your father. Bronwyn sits back in her chair, luminous. Are those tears of excitement sparkling in her eyes? We'd feature different kids every week as we moved along, make a big deal about whatever each of you is able to bring to the table. What conflicts might there be? Who'd emerge as the best leader? Who would become the darling of the masses? And when we reached the village where Carl Walchik is hiding, of course we'd spend some time there. It would be a spectacle. Bronwyn explains, thrusting her arms in the air like she's signaling a touchdown. Sponsors will love it. It'll be dangerous, sure, but with plenty of professional guides and experts to assist with survival skills. We'll pack each show with more excitement and adventure than anything that's ever been on television. What could be better for your college applications or your show business aspirations, if that's what you'll be opting for? So, Simon, what do you think? Will the other kids be into it? How could they not be, right? I have to say that speech of Bronwyn's is taken not in words, but in tone from a speech from a very old movie, King Kong. The previous book is based largely around King Kong. And Carl Denham, the promoter, at the beginning of the movie, when he's suggesting the trip to Kong's Island to get King Kong, makes such a speech about what a great spectacle it's going to be, this venture we're going to go on. So I adopted the tone of Carl Walchuk for Bronwyn and her ambitions for this movie. And if you recall what happens at the end of the original King Kong, it didn't work out as well as Carl Denham, the promoter, might have wanted to, as the monster destroyed half of New York City. Now, these kids are going to go on this adventure. It's going to happen, but not all of them are going to go. One of them is choosing her own direction, and that's Treasure. Treasure is a bee baby. She has features of both. She wants to follow her own career. She wants to be a musician, and she just happens to have gotten the same address that of the old promoter of the show, Bronwyn O. Savage in Los Angeles. And she is, though she doesn't want to call herself a runaway, she is running away. She lives in Chicago. Her parents are divorced. And when we open her scene and her major subplot, she is trying to get on a bus that she's already bought a ticket for, but the baggage handler bus driver is refusing to let her bring her guitar onto the bus. And she does not want to separate herself from her guitar because her guitar is her future. So I'm going to read a little bit of this subplot that has the one character who is not going to go to the Amazon, and that is Treasure. I tell you what, Treasure says to the baggage man driver, let me keep the guitar and I'll play while we're traveling to keep everybody on the bus entertained, like a troubadour. You know what that is, like a traveling musician from the old days. The driver, having climbed completely into the baggage compartment, is bent double like a squatting chimp. He pushes suitcases and boxes around with his knees, then embraces the car case as if it's his dancing partner. Can't be disturbing the other passengers, he says. Rules are rules. Treasure takes a deep breath. She got a pretty big future planned, and this is the first of what she anticipates will be many, many bumps in the road she'll have to overcome. Is it too early to pull out her ace in the hole? How many times will she be able to play her best card? She needs that guitar and can't bear to be separated from it before she even gets started. In her vision of herself as a success, it's as much a part of her as her arms or legs. Listen, she says, and when the bag handler doesn't look up, she shouts, stop, please, I'm talking to you. The stooping handler freezes and frowns at her. You don't recognize me, do you? Treasure asks, raising one of her thick black eyebrows. Not letting me have my guitar? Not letting me play? You'll regret that. You really will. I'm famous, you know. Let me have my guitar and I promise me you'll have a story to tell your grandparents. Famous? The baggage man eyes Treasure skeptically. Treasure tilts her head and her curls glitter in the headlights of a bus passing in the garage. She tries one of the seductive smiles her bio mom was famous for. If the other stars of Amabel's Children are able to carry off that expression, why not her? Even if she isn't an A-baby like Carla, Shayna, and Simon. Did you ever hear of the TV show Amabel's Children? Treasure asks. Thankfully, her voice doesn't crack. The crouching baggage handler coughs into his hand. The one about all those kids who were related and didn't know each other? That's an old show, isn't it? It's not still on the air. Never watched it. The bus exhaust is dizzying, but Treasure stiffens her spine and musters her bravado. It's almost 10 years now since we ended Amabel Children, she says. A lot of seasons, it was the #1 show on TV. I was one of the kids on that show. I'm the biological daughter of Amabel Hadley, and I'm going to be a big star just like my mother. Bigger. So you've got to let me have the guitar. You'll be cheating America if you don't let me keep it. Treasure tries her bio-mom smile again. Is she doing it right? Would it even work without the rest of Amabel's features to complement it? If you don't let me bring my guitar on the bus, I'll write nasty things about you in my memoir after I become a star. The unshaven driver blinks for 1, 2, 3 seconds before he grins and laughs. I do remember Amabel Hadley. Kid star, right? Had a tough go of it later on, kind of burned out. She know you're taking off like this all alone? How old are you anyway? I'm 17, Trisha says, and Amabel died almost 20 years ago. She focuses on the driver's eyes. She would have honored my journey to stardom. The man purses his lips and looks away before glancing back at Treasure shyly. Sorry for your loss, he mutters. He lowers the guitar case to the floor of the compartment and pushes it with his foot toward Treasure. Go ahead, he says. Carry it on board. But if the bus fills up and I need the seat, I'm going to have to stow it under here. Thanks. You won't regret it. Treasure offers him her overstuffed backpack. Take this so I won't be using up extra space. The bagman waves it away. Keep it, he says. Shove it under the seat in front of you so nobody sees you're getting special treatment. Just remember to mention your bus driver in your memoir. Treasure grasps the handle of the guitar case and yanks it from the compartment. She shoulders her backpack and pivots toward the door of the idling bus. Thanks, she calls back. I'll give you a whole chapter. I'll call you the man who started me off. Maybe I'll even write a song about you. Julio, the man says, still crouched in the compartment. He lowers himself to one knee and shoves 3 suitcases further back. Julio, the bus driver. That's what you can call me. So she's off on her adventure. It's launched. The kids are launched on their adventure. There's the bulk of the book. In the middle of the book, they're off to the Amazon to find their father. It isn't exactly a smooth journey, as you'll hear from the next passage, which is, I'll read, they're already in the Amazon. And the one thing that they've been told, the one directive they have from the creator and producer, Bronwyn, is film everything. They all started out with camcorders. Right now, there's one person camcording. And once again, it's Carla, who is a sibling who got them all together in the first place. She's, Carla, as this opens, is filming where they are. This is Carla Untermeyer, and I've taken over camera duties, the sib explains with a selfie. Red welts, bug bites, are visible on her arms as she swipes at her tangled auburn hair. Bad night with the mosquitoes. This morning, we're going to look for food. We think there are edible berries, acai. Our pilot, Paolo, says they're called. They're little and purple. Also, he says we should be on the lookout for Brazil nuts. There's something called cassava root we should also learn to identify, but I'm not sure how. And according to Paolo, there are as many plants in the rainforest that can poison you as can feed you. I remember reading that there are avocados, bananas, coconuts, and mangoes here. I know what those look like, of course, but Paolo laughed at me when I mentioned him. This is no grocery store, he said. He feels bad because he thinks he should be taking charge, but his leg is pretty banged up, and he can only limp around with a crutch he made out of a tree branch. The camera's focus shifts to a small fire pit, littered with paper and plastic packaging. We made a fire last night to keep away whatever that animal was that wouldn't stop screeching, Carla says. We'll keep it going as a signal fire. We gathered up all the snacks we hadn't eaten yet, chips and cookies mostly, stuff that we had in our pockets, and we split it up. We're going to need water, though. The pilot says we're near a river. The Mackay, he thinks. If he's right, that's the river that eventually passes through the Paraja village where our bio dad Carl Walchuk has been living. But Paolo's not so sure how far up or down the river that village might be. He said it could be 5 or 500 miles. Carla turns the camcorder back toward her face and lowers her voice. I think he's exaggerating unless he's a terrible pilot. Wasn't he following a flight plan? That's him over there, sitting on the ground by himself. The camera sweeps in a wide arc that skims across dense foliage, then the burned-out fuselage of the prop plane, before the shot pauses on a figure leaning on the trunk of a tree with his head in his hands. Paula said we were lucky to find this landing strip. It's unregistered, he said. At some point, maybe years ago, maybe last week, the strip was carved out as a landing spot by bad guys involved in illegal mining or deforestation. 1 in 1,000 chance we find this when we're going down, Paula said. Otherwise, we go crash boom and we all die. Well, there they are in the rainforest. And where is Carl? Somehow, through dreams, through communication, because though he's alone or the only non-Parahan in his village, the Parahans are not totally isolated. There's traffic up and down the river. Mailboats come along. Folks who want to trade for certain items that the Parahans have, they come. And news reaches Carl that there's been a plane crash, that there were celebrities on the plane. And given the dreams he's had, the feelings he's had about being a father to those children he essentially left behind 17, 15, probably 15-ish years ago, he decides he's heard about the crash. He wants to go find them. So he takes his son, his actual Parahan son, Zunks, with him, and they go off to search for the ones who were searching for him, his children. Let's go. They're already in the river. They've been canoeing for a day or so. Let's go, son, Carl says. Let's see what lies ahead. Understanding his father's pointing finger, Zunks seizes his oar, then freezes. He cups a hand to his ear, then plunges his oar into the water, paddling furiously. Carl takes up his oar with fresh energy and tries to match his son's pace. The river narrows as father and son skirt another bank, and the current they push against increases. They hear cries and splashings as if they're disturbing a flock of geese. But the bodies that materialize before them aren't geese. They're too big, and the sounds they're making are words Carl recognizes, English words like run, look out, who is it? His heart hammer against his ribs, Carl watches the pale bodies wade hurriedly to shore and disappear into the foliage. Isn't it likely that at least some of them are his children? Both Carl and Zunks have stopped paddling. The young man points, gibbering, at the now empty shallows and riverbank. Who does he think the strangers are? The Paraha believe that spirits and ghosts are real. How will Carl convey to his son that the bathers might be his siblings? Zunks lays his paddle behind him in the canoe and picks up his longbow. He fits an arrow against the string and aims at the shore. But as he's about to release it, his father stops him. No, Carl shouts, a word the Paraha understand, and Zunks lowers his bow. But he keeps the arrow notched. How should Carl indicate friend to the Paraha youth? He hugs himself tightly, his fingertips digging into his rib cage. Zunks tilts his head like a baffled puppy and regrips his bow. Carl points at the shore, places his palm on his chest, and folds his arm together as if he's holding an invisible baby, which he gently rocks. They might be my children, he says to Zunks as calmly as he can. Just like you. Zunks blinks. With remarkable balance, he gets to his feet in the prow of the dugout. Suddenly, too quickly to be stopped, he pivots toward the shore, raises his bow, draws back its string, and lets an arrow fly. Carl gasps. He watches the arc of the arrow, and his vision dims for a second, as if his heart has stopped. He watches the arrow rise over the trees nearest the shore before it begins its descent and disappears into the leafy shadows. A distant cry steals Carl's breath. It's loud enough to disturb roosting birds who rise from the forest canopy and flap away in different directions. He notices for the first time a thread of black smoke. Zunks may have been targeting it. The young man kneels, drops his bow, and picks up his paddle. Without looking at Carl, he digs into the river and, eager to see what he's hit, directs their canoe toward the shore. And the rest of the book explains what happens after that.
Thank you so much for that reading, Gregory. I'd love to just give you a round of applause in all our little homes. Thank you so much. I can just feel the passion for your project and and it comes out in the words as well as in the conversation we kind of had before, we started this launch with Candace, and just how real this world is in your imagination. So yeah, that was really cool to see.
Thank you.
We have some time for audience questions. So if you have a question related to craft or process or Amabel's children, you can either put that in the chat, or you can raise your hand or kind of jump in and ask that question. So I'd love to get a few audience questions. To kick things off, I was maybe wondering, Amabel's Children is your third novel, and I'm curious about how was writing it different from the first two?
My other novels were not originally conceived of as novels, so to speak. They began as short stories. I knew they were related short stories, but sometimes I write one that was the ending. For example, the story Amabel's Children is the last chapter of Tings, the book, the previous book. It's the last chapter of Tings, but it was originally written in 2014. And I knew that vaguely what the story was before it, but it took another 10 years or so to write all the chapters, and initially sending them out as short stories that got published, to bring the whole book together. And then, of course, I had to write into chapters and things like that to connect them. But the whole process was long. And the same with the other novel that I have done. Amabel's Children was inspired by Candace, who at the conclusion of the launch of Tings last year said, I have the name of your next novel, she told me. She said, it's Amabel's Children. And that's how Amabel's Children was born. It was born from the last chapter of the previous book, which is largely focuses on the old TV show and Amabel's ghost floating around observing it. So the process then was therefore this was like writing from a book from beginning to end. Every day I'd come in and start my work in the morning and work the 2 or 3 hours I generally work, just composing. And it was one consecutive story, one effort. There weren't any other projects interrupting it. So I wrote it from beginning to end.
Okay.
Greg,
Hi.
Has Candace given you the title for the sequel to Amabel's Children? Are you going to do a sequel to Amabel's Children, because it kind of begs for one?
It does. There are a couple of different directions to go, and she did. Our pre event launch event conversation today, Candace has several ideas for me. I'm not necessarily going to share them because I'll keep you in suspense, but they're very interesting, and I can combine them with some ideas I've already had for a third. But I also feel like, just like the characters themselves, I feel like it lends itself to a series too. I think we could definitely do the adventures of Amabel's Children from here till doomsday. I think have them visit other places, do other things, and get involved in other activities. But that's I feel attached enough to these characters and feel that they have enough left to give, that I have the feeling that many of them are going to be around for a while with me.
Awesome. I guess I was wondering, how does the fact that this book is a sequel affect your creative process?
Well, the question was, for me, as I started it, I almost, and I would have asked Candace about it if she thought it was a good idea. I almost took the whole last chapter of the previous book and made it sort of an italicized first chapter. And then that just seemed to me to be too much. So I had to, I wrote a prologue that summarized, and I read a bit of the prologue. I started off with that today. And then I tried to filter in through the rest of the chapters and the discussions of chapters without doing some of that ridiculous expository stuff where a character gives a little speech that gives you the background information you need. I tried to filter in the information you need. So that became necessary since it was a sequel and there was information that came out of the first novel that would be necessary for the second novel. So I always had to have an eye or an ear for that. What won't my audience know? What are they going to need to know? What's old information that's going to be important? So that every day I had to think about that as I was composing. And what do I want to keep and what do I want to leave out? Because I had to, there was a rich mine of stuff that I could have used. In fact, if the discussion came about for writing, about if we shift this to writing process, I've always discussed the writing process for my short stories, which is I'll just write and I'll leave every option available. And if I intend to write a 20-page short story, I write a 40-page draft first, at least. And then I sort of carve down, looking for the heart of all of that I've written, and then I can cut the other stuff out. So the process for writing this novel was much the same, except it was much bigger. This is an 85,000 word novel. It was the first draft was 120,000 words, significantly larger, almost a third again larger. And like a god, I cut characters. You just remove them and say, you're out, you're done, goodbye. And you just like wave them off. But if I had characters that were redundant, I cut them. There used to be two, for example, there were two ghosts in the original draft. There were other characters I cut as well. So my writing process stayed the same from short stories, which I, really made up most of my career as a writer is short stories. But just everything at a bigger scale.
A question about the plane crash. Was the scheming director, did she cause the plane crash to occur? And was the mail carrier delivering mail to the Paraha tribe in on it as well?
No, they weren't really. They didn't intend for it to crash. And I don't think things would have gone much differently on the trip if it hadn't crashed. But I felt like I needed to get them down with some sort of emergency that Carl could react to. So I don't spend a lot of time describing the crash. If you read the book, you'll see how that develops. No, I tried to craft the Parahan village much like it really is. And I got a lot of that from this book about the actual anthropologist that the one Carl was doing a documentary of 20 years earlier is based on. It's a book called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes by the guy who studied down there. And while the Paraha are isolated and live in their own community, they're not, they welcome visitors. They even intermix sometimes. They do trade with folks who come for whatever they have, whether it's certain kinds of wood or things that they have in their village, or natural things in and around their village. So they do get visitors, and the mailboat would come by, and the pilot would just kind of look at Carl, who is like a foot taller and clearly not a Parahan, but in every other way tries to act like a Parahan when he comes by. But he did. It is an opportunity for Carl to speak a language he understands when someone like the mailboat person comes by. But no, as devious as Bronwyn seems to be sometimes, and as devoted as she is to her making her TV show, she doesn't cause the crash. I wouldn't have put it past her, but to try to cause a crash that isn't going to hurt anybody is kind of a delicate thing to want to do, So, question.
Greg, Phil here. I have
Hi, Phil.
corny question for you. Are you a fan of reality TV shows?
No, but like everything else in my life, I'm aware of them. And I know what they do, and I know, and I have watched a number of them. Yeah, I won't tell you the ones that I've watched in the past.
You're not into Survivor, huh?
I've never watched Survivor.
Yeah, meaning.
But I think you know what Survivor is when you just hear the name. So it's a little like that. I mean, there are, in terms of atmosphere, there's a little bit of Lord of the Flies in their existence in the Amazon rainforest, and maybe a little bit. I don't know if any of you remember this great novel by Paul Theroux, The Mosquito Coast, which is a nice South American jungle book, and there's not, and there are actually elements of what's that book about? What's that movie about Fitzcarraldo, where he's dragging the boat through the Amazon? So there's little elements of that, things that I've absorbed over time that I use in this. I kind of think of myself as a lint brush. Whatever I pass or read or come in contact with sticks to me, and I put it in my notebook, and then I find ways to use it, or sometimes in combination with other things as I move along and do my writing.
Follow-up question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Do you tend to personalize your characters, or any stories of your own personal life? Do they find their way into your characters' lives?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Stuff of myself, or stuff with from people I know. Sure, it's part of the lint brush. You come talk to me. If you have a conversation with me, beware. But I think a lot of writers will say that, what's fair ground, what's not fair ground. I know certain things that I won't mention that are definitely not subjects I would choose. But generally, my motto since I started doing this full time is, you must be fearless, lad. Just people reject you because you wrote something that they didn't like. Oh well, I always have my characters.
Just be sure to spell my name right in the next novel.
Temple. Let's see, Simon Temple. No, okay. We'll treat you kindly, sir.
I think that Candace might have had a question. Did you want to ask that, Candace?
Well, yeah, I did have a question, but now I've forgotten it.
I think I remember. It was about maybe which one is your favorite?
Oh, yeah. See, I thought you were talking about a question I was just thinking of instead of one way back into yesteryear. Yeah, who is your favorite and your second favorite and your least favorite characters?
Wow. Well, let's go least first. Least favorite character would have to be one that I simply don't like their personality, but their personality is still essential to the development of the book. Because if I really didn't like a character, I'd give him the axe. That's one of the godlike things writers get to do. So the character with the personality that I find neat for least character is Simon, and I let him have it at various points in the book. As you see, he's the most ambitious in terms of wanting to be an actor, and is counting on mostly his charm and good looks and those elements he's inherited from his mother. I like the character of Mabel, who, if you read further, as you read, or if you have read, you'll discover is she creates the fantasy, or perhaps it's not a fantasy for herself, that she's not really one of the siblings, that something happened in the transmission of the fertilized eggs. That's sort of like when Igor dropped the good brain he was bringing to Frankenstein and substituted the criminal brain. So she likes to think that she's proposing the idea that because she looks so little like any of the other characters, that she's not really one of the siblings. And she also seems to me smarter, a little more with it, and has some other interesting characteristics. She also, I think, develops a very strong, maybe even romantic relationship with one of the characters that I hadn't intended, but developed during the course of the novel. So I look for a future for them in the sequel too. So that's it. And my second favorite character, I kind of like I like creating Salvatore. He's a bee baby. He's got long hair. Well, he's got a big fur. He's very hairy. He wears a dress. He plays Lady Macbeth when they do their on the cruise ship entertainment, because you have to take a cruise ship to get from where they leave to get to South America. Of course, siblings have to entertain the passengers on the cruise ship. So I think Salvatore is an interesting character too. I like him. Oh, because she's in the subplot, I have to say I really like Treasure. I think she's very ambitious, but I also love Papa Willie. Papa Willie is a character, an older man who comes into her life, sort of directs her Treasure's career, and his distinguishing feature is that he has the whites of his eyes are tattooed black. So it's a bundle of fun to have a staring contest with Papa Willie.
Thanks for answering that one, Gregory.
I only write one kind of thing, and sometimes magic realism pops in. I don't consider it to be speculative. Maybe it is. It's sort of like I believe in genre bending. So to me, if the story organically calls for something unusual to happen, and it needs a ghost, let's say, or it needs something like a ghost, marginally supernatural, I introduce it into the story without a qualm, and I don't consider it to be not realistic. And if you're looking for a genre and all of a sudden my story isn't the genre you thought it was going to be, I apologize, but not too strenuously.
Thanks for that, Gregory. Phil is wondering if you've started the sequel yet, or are you taking a break from writing for a bit?
Well, I wanted to start writing. I even had ideas for a story a different story, and that I still want to write when I finished. And I finished, like I said, exactly almost to the day, a year from when Candace suggested the title. I was trying to make it be exactly a year, actually. So that was March 26th was when I wrote the last bit and actually submitted the manuscript, I think. Yeah, it took a lot out of me. Surprisingly, it took a lot out of me, and I don't know that I'm only just getting prepared. I've been noting ideas, sharing ideas like I have with Candace, sharing ideas with some of my writing buddies about what I would want to do. But yeah, I don't usually take breaks when I'm writing short stories, but I've done so with this now. But I think I told myself that when this launch concluded that I would be diving back in as of next Monday. So.
Wow, next Monday, getting after it. I love it.
Got to get after it. Nothing to it but to do it, right? A lot of people want to be writers, and if you want to be a writer, you got to write.
It sounds like there's a hand up from Luke, or yeah, I'll ask you to unmute and you can jump in with your question.
Greg, knowing you and having read your stuff before, there's always a very original twist to things. I think I once wrote on Amazon, you're sort of like Poe and Lovecraft, but you're going in other directions. I tend to think of you as the Prince of Darkness. So should I be worried about some of these characters? I've read the beginning and I like some of them.
All right. Well, I think it's fair to like them. I think they have everyone's got dimensions, right? So all that's best of dark and bright meets in their aspect and their eyes, but they're to be loved and not loved. Magic realism or twists or not, I try to make my characters human.
Well, sometimes after reading, I wonder, how do you sleep at night?
That's my wife can attest to this. That's something I'm not familiar with. Night sleep. I don't really sleep a lot. A couple hours a night, maybe, of actual sleep, peaceful sleeping. Just don't. but were I to be trying to sleep, I would not be tortured by my characters or the things that pop into my head. I accept it. I consider it a gift, that I get to do this stuff, and that these things occur to me. Keeps me fresh and happy.
Well, I really like the beginning of the book. I'm rooting for the characters and rooting for the book.
Oh, thank you, Luke.
Any other questions? Well, I'll just kind of wrap up by saying, thank you all so much for being here for this virtual launch for Amabel's Children, and a huge thank you to Gregory for bringing this work into the world. If you'd like to support them, please consider purchasing the book. As I mentioned, the links are in the chat, and I just appreciate you all for showing up and being part of this moment.
If you haven't read Tings yet, that's available through Silverbow as well on Amazon.
Oh, good to mention. Yes. Yeah, first things first, right? Read Tings and then this one. Or can people read it out of order?
I think you could read it. Yeah, I think you could read it both ways, and it would work because it would fill in gaps and introduce new things. Where if you read the second, once you read the first 1 second, you might also start speculating. Okay, what should you do? What should you do with the third?
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thanks for the insight.
Just one other question. I think Carl is the unsung hero of the book, and I look forward to having a sequel featuring Carl and featuring his return from misery and being an outcast.
Gary, I think I kind of agree with you. And one of the elements, and I didn't discuss this with Candace either, but one of the things I would like to see happen in the third book is somehow for Carl and Amabel to come together again. And I don't, because of Amabel's peculiar condition, I don't know how what that's going to be like, but that's insightful because it is something that I think I would like to see happen for Carl and for Amabel too, but mostly for Carl.
Okay. Well, I guess with that, we'll wrap things up and say goodbye. And hopefully we meet again for your next virtual launch, Gregory.
There you go. I can't guarantee it'll be only 1 year, though.
and Greg and Megan, stay behind because I want to just talk a couple of things with you after everyone leaves.
Sure.